There's enough videos on YouTube about how to do a Harley oil change. So in today's video, we're going to go over 7 tips you should be doing while you do your oil change. Alright, let's get into 7 oil change tips for your Harley Davidson Sportster. Tip number 1 is fairly common, and I would say maybe most people by now know this. Tip number 1 is to pre-fill the oil filter and lubricate the O-ring that's on the top of the oil filter. And this does a couple things for you. So by pre-filling the oil filter, what you're doing is the next time you start your bike, you're making it easier for the oil pressure level to build up to the level that it needs to be and get oil to your engine faster. Lubricating your O-ring makes it so that taking off your oil filter during your next service to be much easier and helps create a better seal from that O-ring onto the mating surface on your bike. Tip number 2 is to use aluminum foil when removing the oil filter. For anyone who's done an oil change on their Harley before, you'll know that the position of the oil filter means that when you remove it, you're likely to have oil drip onto the frame and other parts of your bike, which of course isn't fun at all. There's many people who have actually used cardboard under their oil filter to help catch some of that drip and make sure it doesn't get on the parts. But what you can do that's even easier is to use a simple strip of aluminum foil. And because aluminum foil is very flexible, you can kind of shape it to the frame and how you want so that you can get that oil to land on the aluminum foil and then easily drip down to your oil pan, making cleanup very easy. All you gotta do is crumble up that aluminum foil and throw it in the trash. Tip number 3 is actually a pretty tricky one. You'll see many people suggest removing the oil dipstick, which would allow air to flow into the system, which means oil will flow out of your bike much easier. And that's true. That's a great tip and something that will help you in your oil change, but it's something you need to think about and take with a grain of salt. Some people, for example, people with Harley Sportsters that have lower bikes have what's a low profile oil pan, like I do here. With this low profile oil pan, while it works great and does its job, it's fairly shallow. So what happens is if you actually have the oil flow coming out of your bike too fast, there's a chance that more oil will land on this oil pan faster than it can actually seep into the hole and inside the oil pan, which means you'll then have oil spill over the side. So while removing your dipstick to increase oil flow is a useful tip, keep in mind what kind of bike you have, how much oil is going to be coming out, and the size oil pan you have, and make sure you can handle all of that extra flow that's actually coming out of the bike. If you can't, you might as well just leave your dipstick in there and have a slightly slower flow rate and not having any oil spill onto the floor. Tip number 4 is to remove the oil drain plug one last time after you've already filled the bike up with oil. What this does is to make sure you're removing any air packets that have been trapped into that oil drain tube or right at the bottom of the oil pan casing. Tip number 5 is to change the oil while it's hot. And when I say hot, I don't mean start the bike, let it sit in your driveway for a few minutes before changing the oil. That's actually not going to be good enough. You want to get your oil to operating temperature first. So typically what you want to do here is ride your bike for around 30 minutes and bring it back and then do that oil change. So this gets the oil warm, flowing better, and also mixes it up so you're more likely to get all of that old oil out so you can then put in fresh oil in its place. Tip number 6 is to change the oil sooner rather than later. If you're coming up on your 5,000 mile service, but maybe you're about to do a trip that's maybe a couple hundred miles, and it's like, should I do it a little early or should I just do it right after I come back? While it probably won't hurt to do your oil when you come back, it definitely won't hurt to do your oil sooner. Oil changes are always a good thing. It's never a bad thing to put fresh oil into your bike. And at the same time, it also serves as a great opportunity to do other checks on your bike. For example, checking your clutch, checking your chain tension, checking your tires, anything else you might want to do for a trip. So if you're ever in doubt, do your oil change beforehand, not after. The 7th and final tip is to record when you did your oil change. Many people say they'll remember, and then they forget. Recording and when you do your oil change is such an easy task, you might as well do it, and you never know when it'll save your butt in the future. And this doesn't just apply to oil changes. So when you're changing tires, or any other kind of maintenance on your bike, it's always useful to have this recorded in a spreadsheet, a note-taking app on your phone, or even a notebook that's in the house. It does not hurt at all. And for people who have warranty still on their bike, this is not a tip, but more of a requirement. You're definitely going to want to record when you did the oil change, with what kind of oil, how much oil you put in, and have a receipt for the oil that you purchased as well, if you want to keep that warranty. I hope this was helpful. Have a good day.